On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Chee is back, and he's going to take us back to Wispapalooza, and this time he's going to take us through horn antennas for point-to-point communication. Plus, we all know backup and recovery is an important thing, and Curtis is going to take us through some of the common questions we should be asking ourselves. Plus, Curtis, Brian, McHenry, and I talk with a great guest, Richard Alvarez from Saggezza, to talk about the emergence of voice inside of UX. Twyat on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twyat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 368, recorded November 15th, 2019. Voice and UX with Saggezza. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by LastPass, a personal password manager and identity solution for businesses all in one. You only need one master password, and LastPass remembers the rest. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and up to 6 times faster with no hidden fees for egress or API requests. Calculate your savings and try Wasabi with free unlimited storage for a month at wasabi.com, code enterprise. And by Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology's Advanced Technology Center is like no other testing and research lab with over 150 different security services and applications, including OEMs like Cisco Umbrella, and it's virtual, so you can access it 24/7. To learn more and get insights into all that it has to offer, go to wat.com/twit. Welcome to Twyat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Maresca, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise. But I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin, senior editor at Dark Reading. Curtis, you've had a busy couple weeks here. Maker Faire, Ignite, you're doing some traveling. How's everything going?
Well, it's going well. The Maker Faire Orlando was a smashing success. We had a great time with tens of thousands of visitors, hundreds of makers, and just a glorious time. And I hope to be recovered from that very soon now. As you can tell from my video, I'm in an undisclosed location. I'm traveling, but happy to be here with the Twyat Riot, getting ready to sail into another writing weekend.
Thanks, Curtis, for being here. Well, speaking of our experts, we have our security expert back. He's from F5 Networks, Mr. Brian McHenry. Bam, you've been busy lately. What have you been up to?
Well, we just got done with F5 sales kickoff, where my team built a whole bunch of security training for some new services that we're launching in the coming year. The big one right now is in private beta. So if you're an F5 customer, reach out to your F5 sales team and ask them about the Bot Protect service. If you're worried about credential stuffing, worried about automated attacks on your web properties, we've got a new service. I hate to use buzzwords, but machine learning, AI, they're all built in there, and it's super easy to integrate with either Big IP or NGINX. On the personal front, though, I've been traveling quite a bit with my older son and the rest of the family as he figures out what's next in his life, i.e. college.
Fantastic. Well, Ben, Curtis, thanks so much for being here. But we do have a jam-packed show, so we should get started. Not only is Chee going to take us back through Wispapalooza, and this time he's going to take us through the horn antennas for point-to-point communication. Plus, we all know that backup and recovery is an important thing. Well, Curtis is going to take us through some of the common questions in that process. Plus, we have a great guest, Richard Alvarez, UX practice manager at Saggezza, to talk to us about the emergence of voice in UX. But before we get into all of that, there's been some interesting blips in this week's news. So let's go ahead and jump into those. Now, I wanted to start out this week with a little bit of a lighter story, more fun of story for about the future of materials. Now, being a tactile and visual aesthetics person, I like when things are made of good materials. Now, materials science has always been kind of intriguing to me. In fact, my dad worked as a material science for years with another well-known inventor who actually invented PVC, Dr. Daniel Fox. And when I hear about new and innovative materials that could shape technology in the future, I want to talk about them now. Take a second, imagine this. You're using a 3D printer to make bulletproof material. That's right, bulletproof. Well, researchers at Rice University have found a way. We all know that 3D printing has a future in manufacturing, but what about the researchers at Rice are doing is finding ways to print complex crisscrossing and zigzagging patterns. Now, by printing these complex patterns, they're able to build up polymer structures that are strategically calculated and engineered to give objects incredible strength. Not only that, but the structures can be easily tweaked and tuned to exhibit other amazing properties as well. Some of these properties and patterns are based on theoretical microscopic structures made of cross-linked carbon nanotubes that were predicted to have remarkable properties, can be both strong and lightweight. Now, the interesting thing here is that Rice University researchers discovered that even these complex patterns and structures, when scaled up, so they actually can be recreated using 3D printers, they still exhibit those predicted properties like strength and extreme compressibility, despite even being rigid structures. Now, how strong are they? Well, bulletproof strong. Now, the researchers blasted two cubes, one made of solid polymer and the other one made of the polymer printed with the cross-linked structures. They used a projectile traveling at 5.8 kilometers per second, which is actually close to 13,000 miles per hour. Now, neither cube was destroyed, but the solid polymer block was left with a huge dent and cracks propagating all the way through it, compromising its strength. The other cube stopped the projectile by its second layer, leaving the rest of it completely intact and undamaged. Now, there are countless fields in technology and manufacturing that need lightweight and strong materials like this new discovery. Now, all of you have to do is imagine what you'll apply this material to, and you'll have your vision of the near future.
Now, would you be surprised to learn that the public cloud provider's network performance varies very wildly? Well, Thousand Eyes, a cloud analytics company, in its second annual cloud performance benchmark, has succeeded in measuring a major performance factor objectively: public cloud providers' global network performance. In this study, Thousand Eyes looked at the 5 major public cloud providers: Alibaba Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, IBM Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. It did by analyzing over 320 million data points from 98 global metro locations over 30 days. This included measuring network performance from within the US using multiple ISPs and global network measurements by checking out speeds between availability zones and connectivity patterns between the cloud providers. Now, besides measuring raw speed, the company also looked at latency, jitter, and data loss. You can, of course, read this article that's been linked for you in the show notes, but you can also tune in next week and ask Thousand Eyes about the report, since they're our guests for episode 369 on November 22nd.
Hey, it's getting more expensive to be a bad guy. Companies that focus on continuously testing their security through automated means and regular penetration testing roughly double the cost to attackers of finding exploitable vulnerabilities in their systems, according to data from security assessments and red team engagements collected by crowdsourced security firm Synack. The company found that the average number of times that a red team member had to probe an asset to find a vulnerability more than doubled, actually increasing by 112% on average over the last 2 years. The findings suggest that companies that incorporate security into their development and operations are succeeding in hardening their systems. Now, other research has shown the impact that security investment can have on the cost of cyber attacks. The annual Cost of Cybercrime study conducted by the Ponemon Institute and most recently sponsored by Accenture found that 4 main technologies can help reduce the costs associated with breaches: security intelligence threat sharing, automation, artificial intelligence and machine learning, advanced identity and access management, and cyber and user behavior analytics.
Now, it's been a long road for the cloud service providers of the world when it comes to advocating for the latest defense contract called Jedi, or Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure. Now, the large cloud computing contract is reported to be worth over $10 billion, and the DoD announced the owner of that contract this past month. Now, the race was tight between Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, and Hitachi Data. Now, after protests from Google employees, Google decided to drop out of the contention for the contract because of a conflict with its corporate values. Plus, Amazon was thought to be the front runner due to its position and market share in the cloud computing, and because it was the only company to hold the Defense Department's highest level of security certification called Impact Level 6. Now, the order that most thought that the DoD would decide was based on market share. Now, with Amazon Cloud Computing being the market leader, holding about 48% of market share according to Gartner, Microsoft is the second largest with 15.5% share. However, the DoD came forward on October 25th and shocked a bunch of people when it announced that the contract was going to none other than Microsoft. Now, the Jedi contract was a significant financial disappointment from Amazon. They even committed to hiring 25,000 more people over 10 years in the Washington area, a significant East Coast expansion that would focus in part on the government business. Now, the Pentagon actually has come forth and expressed that awarding the contract to Microsoft and making the decision to do so was solely on the merits and without regard to political considerations. Well, Amazon's not conceding just yet. On November 18th and November 8th, Amazon filed a protest under seal in federal court. Now, according to Amazon, numerous aspects of the Jedi evaluation process contained clear deficiencies, errors, and unmistakable bias, according to them. And it's important that these matters be examined and rectified, they feel. Now, the contract will be implemented with Microsoft during litigation unless judges actually put a pause on the process. It's up to the courts now, and Amazon's waiting on the edge of their seats.
In Apple news, New York regulators are investigating the Apple Card after a viral complaint of sexism. It was a big deal, especially for the banks of the world, when Apple launched its own branded MasterCard nationwide this past year. In the months since, the digital-first payment system has won some fans for its easy integration into the iPhone and Apple ecosystem, and it more or less seemed to work about as well as any other credit card. Now, however, financial services regulators want to know what's going on under the hood amid accusations that the software determining the card's terms has a sexist slant. The story in a nutshell talks about how people like Steve Wozniak and his wife, with only joint accounts for everything, got hit with Steve getting 10 times the credit limit and users complaining that even when women pay off their balance in full, they aren't allowed to use the card until the next billing period. Software developer and entrepreneur Dave Hansen took to Twitter late last week to complain about his wife Jamie Hansen's experience with Apple Card. He was upset because he and his wife filed joint tax returns, live in a community property state, and been married for a long time. Yet Apple's black box algorithm thinks David deserves 20x the credit limit his wife does. No appeals work. Not only that, David shared a screenshot of $0 owed on a limit of apparently $57.24. In addition, even when she pays off her ridiculously low limit in full, the card won't approve any spending until the next billing period. Apple VIP support isn't the only ones interested in figuring out if the company's mysterious algorithm is behaving in discriminatory ways. Regulators are investigating now too. All financial products and services offered in New York State are required not to discriminate against protected groups. Those products include the Apple Card, which is backed by New York-based Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs says that the credit limits are reviewed on an individual basis, as if that was going to be enough for consumers and regulators. Algorithms with systemic biases are popping up all over the grid, and one hopes that companies will be held accountable for this behavior as AI and other technology becomes more prominent.
Well, 2019 is on track to be the worst year ever for cyber attacks. 2019 likely will break a record for the most data breaches and exposed records ever, according to a new report. There were 5,183 data breaches reported, with 7.9 billion records exposed in just the first 9 months of this year, according to Risk-Based Security, which tracks publicly reported breaches. That's an increase of 33.3% in breaches and 112% in total records over the same period in 2018. Some 3.1 billion of the exposed records came from just 6 breaches between July 1st and September 30th. While malicious actors have been responsible for most incidents, accidental exposure of data on the internet has put the most records at risk. So far this year, over 6 billion records have been made freely accessible thanks to misconfigured databases, backups, endpoints, and services.
People who've traveled abroad a lot are always uneasy about when they go through security and feel that their devices that may contain company secrets might actually be searched without cause. Now, having gone through an experience where security tried to force me to unlock an encrypted device for no reason, I can actually relate to this. Now, on the flip side, it's always a good to be safe than sorry, so it's a struggle between what's right and wrong here. Well, federal judge this past week ruled that the U.S. border agents need reasonable suspicion, quote unquote, but not a warrant to search travelers' smartphones and laptops at airports and other U.S. ports of entry, a practice that has been growing in the recent years. Now, U.S. District Judge Denise Casper in Boston ruled in a lawsuit by 11 travelers that border officials need to be able to point to specific facts to justify searching someone's devices for contraband like child pornography and counterfeit media. That is a higher standard than agents with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement under their current policies have been required to do or apply to conduct routine searches of electronic devices. Now, she said that while officials have a paramount interest in protecting the border, the privacy interests of travelers who actually have personal information could be otherwise searched without cause had to be balanced against it. Now, the judge said that to the extent CBP and ICE policies allowed for such searches without cause, and they violate the U.S. Constitution's Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search and seizures. But Casper declined to force agents to have a probable cause and secure warrants before searching devices, really a higher standard sought by the plaintiff's lawyer at the American Civil Liberties Union and Electronic Frontier Foundation. This feels like good news for travelers because it puts an end to the government's ability to conduct suspicionless fishing expeditions, and the court reaffirms that border is not a wall-less place and that we don't lose our privacy rights when traveling. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get there, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's LastPass. Now, people have all their favorite tool that they use every day, and I'll tell you one thing, mine is definitely LastPass. I love it. I use it every day. Think about it. You have a username and password for every site you go to, every site, especially the ones you find most important to you, like for your financial sites, your business sites, your social networks, your email, you name it. For me, it's 5 different banks. I'm supposed to have a different username and password for each and every one of them. It becomes almost impossible to remember and manage. And you don't want to write the passwords down on sticky notes or put them in your email because that's just a plain bad idea, right? Well, that's where LastPass comes in and saves us all. LastPass automatically remembers and fills your passwords in anytime, anywhere, whether it's on your computer or on your mobile device. And all you have to do is remember your master password, and LastPass remembers the rest. Now, I got hooked on it when I started using it on my desktop, but it was so useful, I actually started using it on all my devices as well. In fact, I gave it to my wife as part of LastPass families, set her up last night. She was so impressed with how easy it was to use. She started entering in all of her sites right there, and I actually started sharing all of my site information with her as well. So I can tell you it's very easy to use. It supports all the browsers, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, and more. Plus, it's great on Android and iOS. Now, what it adds as a peace of mind here is that your data is actually encrypted and decrypted at the device level. Now, that actually means that your data is stored in a vault and it's kept secret even from LastPass. And I remember today I was actually called at work by my family, and they said, hey, we can't make this payment. We don't remember the password. Did I remember? Of course not. I didn't remember it. All I had to do was visit the LastPass vault and use my own one and only master password, and bam, LastPass remembered it. They could give me the information, the password, and we were able to make the bill and make that payment in time. LastPass literally saved me time and money. Now, I'm talking about my personal experiences here with LastPass, my personal account. But again, like I mentioned, there's also LastPass families for the entire family. And of course, they also have LastPass for the enterprise too. Now, they recently set up an expanded business lineup with some amazing features that will improve security across your company and make all of your lives easier. LastPass Enterprise includes single sign-on for 1,200 plus SAML integrated apps, each with its own getting started guide, so it's simple to actually get up and running. Now, LastPass also has MFA that actually leverages biometrics like your face and your fingerprint, contextual factors like your location or your IP address. Now, LastPass Identity is a combination of LPE and LPMFA, from single sign-on and password management to actually adaptive authentication. LastPass gives granular control to IT and frictionless access to all users, all in one simple, secure solution. What's even better with LastPass? Well, once you've added all your passwords to the vault, LastPass actually goes even further. They have something called a security challenge feature. They actually show you where you need to make the changes to actually improve security. If you have duplicate passwords or if you have passwords that are weak, it'll actually give you that information and tell you where you need to go fix things. Not only will you actually receive a score, but they actually give you detailed results about all of your accounts. You actually know which passwords are putting you at risk and how you need to fix them. Now, LastPass makes it easy to use unique random passwords for all of your employees, so you don't have to remember it or write it down. And every employee has their own secure vault for managing and accessing passwords. Now, organizations can just also set up a master password requirements, restrict access to specific devices and locations, and enable password resets and more. Now, I'll tell you one thing that really actually got my eyebrows raised is that the fact that they actually have Active Directory integration. Yay. That means that you only have to remember your password to the network and bam, you have access to LastPass as well. One password to rule them all. Now, protect yourself and your business with LastPass, the #1 most preferred password manager, trusted by over 43,000 businesses. Twit uses LastPass Enterprise, and we're excited about all of the new products they have to offer. LastPass also has an expanded business lineup with some amazing features that will improve security across your company and make life easier for your users. Visit LastPass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. That's LastPass.com/twit. And we thank LastPass for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for the bites. And this week we actually have another inside look of Wispapalooza from Chee, and this time he's going to talk a little bit about antennas. Throw it over to Chee. Chee.
Hi, this is Brian Chee. I'm at Wispapalooza 2019 in the RF Elements booth and talking to Tassos Alexio.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about tooting our own horn.
That's awesome. So yeah, at RF Elements, we've been making the outdoor wireless market horny for the past 5 years now, as we say it, right? So here we have very high-end asymmetrical horn antennas that are built specifically for the outdoor 5 gig market, right? So what they really give you is very precise radiation angles and very high stability. So for your commercial, enterprise, high-end solution, horn antennas really give you the stability that you need for repeatable links, for stable links, and for anything that you want to do, whether it's point-to-point or even point-to-multi-point, right?
Right. So for instance, if I'm in a very RF noisy environment, by concentrating my energy down to a narrower beam,
Correct.
I have a better chance at linking my remote office across town or down the block.
Absolutely, but that's only one part of it, right? So
Sure.
it's very important to have a focus beam, of course, but we have 0 side lobes, right? So really all you're getting is all your energy in the main beam, which is focused towards the other end of your link. By having 0 side lobes, we're not picking up a lot of the radiation that other antenna manufacturers are picking up through side lobes at the back of the antenna, the sides of the antennas and stuff like that. So it's really a twofold thing.
Sure. And a lot of other manufacturers, if you talk to them, lobes, what's that?
Yeah,
they like to ignore that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got some amazing models.
Thank you.
And why don't we show off a few of them so we can see what lobes look like?
Yeah. So for point-to-point antennas, so here we have 2 different antenna technologies. This right here is the 3D radiation diagram of what the RF energy looks like coming out of a parabolic dish antenna, this type of antenna here, right? So the RF radiation patterns for a lot of antenna types are inherent to that specific technology. So, every manufacturer of parabolic dishes, the RF pattern looks very similar to this, right? It might be slightly bigger or larger, whatever, but if we start rotating it, you can see how the energy comes out. So you have the highly focused main lobe here where you want your connection, and all these other lobes here are considered side lobes, the secondary lobes outside of the main antenna. So if we flip it, here we have an ultra horn, which is this horn antenna here, made specifically designed for point-to-point because it's highly focused, high gain, but you can see that there's 0 side lobes. So you have nothing but high efficiency RF coming out the main lobe only without any side lobes like you have for parabolic dish antenna technology.
So explain to the audience, what are the ramifications of lobes?
Yeah, so basically the lobes allow you to pick up signal in unintended directions, right? So basically the biggest problem is this is where you hear most of your noise, and this is also where you start creating all of your noise for your other co-located APs, right? So it's really a twofold. It's not just receiving noise, but you're creating noise that you're going to be competing with yourself later on.
Right, and we're talking about lost energy too, right?
It's wasted energy. We actually did a comparison. So a parabolic dish antenna, it's on our website now. We are able to calculate beam efficiency, which is really a very important parameter that no manufacturer really talks about. They talk about front to back ratio, side lobe level, but that's only one parameter at one frequency. We're able to actually calculate the entire efficiency and give you how much loss you have. So parabolic dish antennas are fairly efficient, somewhere around 60%, but an ultra horn is 99% efficient because all the energy is focused just in the main beam. So it's very noise immune outside of its main beam angle, right?
Okay, so do I have to use a particular radio?
No, we're very vendor neutral. So let me show you here. Another very unique function of our horn antennas is our proprietary twist ported. You connect and disconnect all your radios and we create them into waveguides. So if you're using, this one happens to be Ubiquiti. If you're using a Ubiquiti LTU, a Prism, Air Fiber, whatever radio you have, we have adapters and they simply just slide in, click and lock in place, and then you just twist and lock. It's that simple. No more external SMA connectors. Again, another thing that we brought to the market is let's make it waveguide, let's make it more efficient and eliminate the external pigtails where you get water ingress and other issues, right?
Right,
Damaged
and you
pigtails.
lose energy on those pigtails?
Yeah, on average up to 3 dB. Your power is lost on the pigtail interface between the antenna. So now we have near zero loss here with our twist port adapters. So whether, again, this happens to be all Ubiquiti, but if you're using Cambium, Microtech, or Mimosa, we have twist port adapters for most of their very popular antenna products. But our antennas work with all 5 GHz radios, right? So we have what we call our carrier class line, which is the same amazing antenna technology with just integrated end connectors in the back, right? So if we don't have an adapter for one of these compatible hardware platforms, then you could use our carrier class line and get all the benefits of them. So
and lots of different variations. Different beam shapes?
Yeah, different beam shapes,
like
beam angles.
Sneak down an alleyway?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this actually happens to be a sector like. This is actually a 60 degree azimuth.
Fabulous.
And 25 degrees. Another unique thing is how easy, right? So the antennas just slip into our mount, right? So we make it really easy. Typically when you're outdoors installing networks, you have multiple bolts and screws and washers and nuts and all these other things. We just have 2 bolts in order to connect it to the tower. Once it's there, then a climber can take it off his carabiner and just drop it in to the captive mount like that. You can adjust your azimuth and adjust your down tilt and all lock it in. So very ergonomical setup as well as far as how they work and how they're used.
Super cool.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a few applications. You know, this is something that I'm going to take a really hard look at.
That'd be awesome.
And you know, if you're an IT person and you pick up your office across the street, down the block, or even, you know, from the mountains.
Even a campus, right? I mean, you may be trying to link multiple buildings, so you don't have to necessarily make point-to-point shots to all of them. You could actually maybe do a point-to-multipoint and bring in 2 or 3 locations into a single location. So again, all of the different antennas that we have are just different configurations to allow you to, you know, provide one of these solutions.
And conserve your energy, and maybe you don't need that extra radio.
Absolutely, yes. That's another great point. Yep.
Anyway, we're at RF Elements, and we're getting horny.
Awesome.
Thank
for
you
coming
very
by.
much.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Cheebert. Also, thank you to Teos, product evangelist for RF Elements. Of course, thank you to Cheebert for all capturing it all. Well, folks, all of us here at Twite, we feel really strongly about backing up. And not only can it save you from a world of hurt when it comes to ransomware and damaging data, damaging situations, it also just kind of makes sense, right? Well, on that note, I'm going to throw it over to Curtis, who's going to take us through some of the backup and recovery questions we should all be asking ourselves. Curtis?
Well, we all know how important backup and recovery are to a business IT infrastructure. And my colleague, Sarah Peters, has put together a list of 8 backup and recovery questions you need to ask yourself before you get into the middle of a disaster, DDoS attack, or ransomware onslaught. Questions like, How soon before we're back up? How good are our backups? And these are the wrong times to be asking these questions. Furthermore, if you come up with the wrong answer to the questions, well, that just makes you feel like you're being kicked while you're down. Good backups are essential to business continuity, but how do you know whether yours are good? And how do you know they'll be ready when you need them? You can start, she says, by finding the answers to the following 8 questions. Number 1, why am I backing this up? Now, there's a big difference between backing things up for archival purposes and backing them up for recovery purposes. One is long-term record storage for things like tax or corporate governance issues, while the other is for a quick restoration in the event of an attack, disruption, corruption, or disaster. John Peranti, president of a consultancy called IP Architects, says what it comes down to is what are the business values and requirements? How does it align with your recovery time and recovery point objectives? What are the business value and business expectations for the availability of the data? And what are the regulatory obligations and requirements? Now, something he mentioned there comes with question 2. What's the RPO and RTO? Experts advise that you identify the recovery point objective, that's RPO, and the recovery time objective, it's RTO, for all your assets. Now, RPO is the maximum amount of data you can tolerate losing. In other words, can your business survive intact if it loses all the data from the last week? Or does it entirely collapse if it loses all the data from the last hour? RTO, the recovery time objective, is the maximum tolerable amount of time to recover. Maybe you get all of your data back, but you don't get access to your applications for a full day. Maybe your business, on the other hand, is one where you really need to have those applications back within 10 minutes. Think about a stock exchange. Think about a major bank. I remember seeing the backup and recovery scenario for a major U.S. bank where in the event of an absolute catastrophe at their primary data processing center, they would only lose 1.5 seconds of data and be back up and running in about the same amount of time. Now, question 3, am I using the right type of solution? Now, perhaps a scheduled full volume weekly backup and daily incrementals will be perfectly fine. On the other hand, if you are on a second-to-second basis for your business, continuous or real-time backup might be necessary. You know, there's a big difference in being an online retailer or a small-town healthcare operation. So if you want to be able to recover surgically individual files and capabilities, it's more efficient to do things at a file level rather than a volume level. On the other hand, that kind of surgical precision takes longer, takes more processing power, and probably more storage. So that means that it's more expensive. Now, question 4 is, can I restore to a known good version? That can be important in the case of, say, a ransomware attack, where there are backup solutions that replicate a mirror image of the current data, but that could be data that's just been infected and encrypted. Perhaps you need to have archival versions sitting there that let you go back to a known good version sometime before the attack. So questions number 5, are my backups backed up far enough? Now, there's a rule in backup. It's called the 3-2-1 rule. That's 3 copies on 2 media types with 1 copy off-site. For disaster recovery purposes, you'll want to have 1 set of backups stored well outside the same physical area as your primary set of data, and you'll want to make sure that you're not in the same evacuation zone as the backup provider. This particular consideration is one of the many reasons why cloud backup has become so attractive to so many small businesses and individuals. It tends to click off several of these boxes at once. Question 6, are my backups secure? In other words, the backup copies are only so much good if someone can get in and steal or corrupt those backup copies. Question 7, can I retrieve my backups when I need them? One of the things a lot of people forget is, how can I make sure that the integrity of the backup is maintained for the duration of its storage? Pardon me. For example, if the backups are stored in tape, how can you make sure that the tape has not been damaged? So the way you get around this is you test your recovery. Now, a lot of people test backup, but you need to test recovery as well. And finally, number 8, are your backups going to make things worse? This sounds like a counterintuitive question, but if you have a security incident, you're going to need to go back into a root cause analysis and say, how far back do we need to go? At what point do we think we have a clean backup? Because let's face it, if you recover a copy of your data and system that has the infection, well, you've just restored the infection as well. So you've got 8 questions and all of these considerations. And Bam, I want to go to you first. That whole multiple location rule, that data doesn't exist unless it exists in 3 locations, your primary and 2 backups. Is this something that still applies, or have the individual backup media become so reliable that we don't have to worry about that anymore?
Well, I think you still want to be more resilient, right? I think it's a lot like anything, right? Even when we talk about security, my little area of expertise, and we talk about layered defenses, right? You want to have layers of defense for your backup availability. Now, cost can become a consideration, but there are a lot of long-term sort of slow performance backups that you can use as like sort of your tertiary backup media that actually don't really cost that much. It just will take you a little bit longer time to recover from those types of cloud backup media. And certainly I think, 2 places probably isn't enough, right? You have I would say you have your live data, you have your hot backup, and then you have your sort of longer term storage backup. That's probably a pretty sufficient strategy for most organizations, except for maybe some of the largest ones where the data is super critical or of a very significant mass. Well, you were talking really about the data backup, and data backup is what most people think about. But Lou, I want to ask you, for many organizations, backing up applications, and especially the application environment, all of those parameters that are set, all of the various environmental variables that have to be put together, is just as critical. Now, we've hit the place where so many applications involve the cloud. Do we still need to think about backing up applications, or is that something that the magic of the cloud takes care of for us?
The magic of the cloud, it takes care of everything, right? I think, obviously there's a lot of applications out there today that are cloud native, and so you get this availability and this capability within some of these PaaS and SaaS services that offer automatic backups for you, where you can kind of restore last known good states of applications or even user data. But, obviously a lot of people still have on-premise solutions. I think that's a big deal. And again, there are still cloud-based services that can offer you help here. Like, for instance, I think, I'm very familiar with Azure Backup Server. It can help you back up not only your OS's configuration data, but also the all of your applications and very specific data that you want to be backing up. And it can be all done in the cloud securely. And again, it's offered for on-premise. But of course, you also want to make sure that for your on-premise applications, you're doing it for them as well, whether you have cloud services or not. This gets complex because, like you were talking about, there's lots of different ways to do it. But it's not just the data that you care about; it's the configuration information. It's the profiles. It's how the OS has been configured. It's a lot of things that users need to be successful, as well as organizations. Like, for instance, you might have a device that might be a kiosk device, and you don't want to restore a backup that's, of a tablet or just a workstation, right? You want to restore it in the kiosk settings so that you can be up and running and be ready to go in your sales event. So I think there's just a lot of things going on here. And I think a lot of organizations just have to really just pay attention. Again, these 8 backup and recovery steps have definitely been helpful. Thank you, Curt. Well, folks, that does it for the Bites. Next up, we have our guest to drop some knowledge on the Twilight Riot. But before we get there, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's, of course, Wasabi. Now, one thing I can tell you is Wasabi is super awesome because you think about it. I use cloud storage, and the more I store in it sometimes, the more I access it, the more operations I perform on it, the more I get charged, right? Well, in this day and age, that's really kind of the story that most cloud storage companies actually go through. Now, most cloud storage providers are competing nowadays to see how low they can go with their storage fees and those egress and ingress fees, while Wasabi has a solution for you. Now, from experience, I can tell you that the more sometimes you go cheaper on cloud storage systems, you also give up on performance and reliability. Well, Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage is going to help you fix all of these things. Now, from small personal projects all the way up to enterprise projects, Wasabi has figured it all out. Now, let's start with the cost because this is really amazing. Listen to it. $5.99 per terabyte per month. Now, that's not only super competitive, they have a game changer here. Listen, unlimited free egress for your data. That's it. No charge for API calls, so you don't have to pay to actually access your data. Now, I go check out right now what you're already paying for cloud storage because I can tell you that not having to include egress fees and API calls for those CRUD operations will really save you some money. It'll reduce the cost of doing business for sure. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if they're cheaper, they must be slower, or they don't have all the bells and whistles, right? Well, with Wasabi, they are able to tackle those areas as well. They have developed a disruptive set of technologies. They found ways to pull raw performance out of storage devices without compromising anything. They've actually revolutionized this process. They actually lay data down on disks sequentially as opposed to in blocks. Now, what happens from that? Well, that means that Wasabi's cloud storage is 80% cheaper and 6 times faster in speed than the industry leaders. Now, are you in your organization worried about compliance of your data? Well, of course. Well, that's where Wasabi can help you as well. They have HIPAA, FINRA, and CGS compliance. They're fast, they're cheap, but it isn't worth much if you don't have secure data, right? Well, Wasabi has an answer too. Wasabi offers a unique feature of immutable buckets that cannot be deleted or altered, protecting your valuable data from accidental or malicious destruction. Now, see if you can find another service doing that as well today. Plus, they also add 90-day rotating integrity checks and 11 nines of durability. Now, moving your on-premise IT setup to a cloud solution is one of the most critical business decisions your company will make. Now, according to Gartner, by 2025, 80% of enterprises will have shut down their traditional data center versus only 10% today. That's a lot more. Now, Wasabi is going to help ease the transition and have you feel confident to move to the cloud. Now, data storage is all that Wasabi does. They are the experts. It's their passion. They believe that in the world of rapidly escalating cloud storage needs, that progress depends on cloud storage being more like a utility with fast, affordable storage available in endless supply. I bet you want to try it out right now. Go build something fun or move your data to the cloud right now. They truly understand the needs of enterprises, so they don't have things like egress fees. Calculate savings for yourself and start a free trial, unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click the free trial link, and enter the code ENTERPRISE. Join the movement and migrate your data to the cloud with confidence. Go to wasabi.com and make sure to use the offer code ENTERPRISE. And we thank Wasabi for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We get to bring in a guest that actually drops some knowledge on the Twilight Riot. And today we have Richard Alvarez, UX Practice Manager at Saggezza. Richard, thank you so much for being here and joining us on Twilight.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, our audience loves to hear origin stories. Can you maybe take the folks at home on your journey through tech and actually how you actually ended up at Saggezza?
Yeah, for sure. I took the scenic route. So I was an English major in undergrad, and somehow I got a job at Microsoft. And this was a long time ago. I was working on Windows 3.1, so that kind of dates me. Back then, I remember working on code and thinking to myself, why did it have to be this big, or they're located over there, or colors, fonts, all the design choices that we were making, but more importantly, functionality. Like, why are we doing it this way? And I think in the back of my mind, I was thinking UX. I just didn't have the vocabulary back then. I left Microsoft to get my master's in computer science, met my wife here in Chicago, and stayed here, but started my own company for a little while. We were in an interactive agency. I got involved in CD-ROM technology, then Flash, then the .com stuff happened, and that turned into JavaScripting. I wrote a book, became pretty popular, and then decided to build my own product with some colleagues. While I was doing that, I joined Saggezza in the back of my mind, thinking that maybe that product might take off. Unfortunately for us, it didn't. We had a lot of fun pitching it and just kind of brainstorming on ideas about how we would bring that to market. But I think the journey landed me here at Saggezza. I came in as a front-end developer with all those thoughts about UX and how we would build products better, the best products possible, and asking the right kind of questions and starting from why are users actually even using these products? What do they want from them? After my project ended here, the first project at Saggezza, they asked me, what do you want to do next? And I was very interested in starting a UX practice. And about 2.5 years ago, that's what we did, and that takes us to today. So I'm now the UX practice manager here at Saggezza. We are focused on understanding business needs, but more importantly, customer needs, their pain points, their frustrations, and working with product teams to build the best products possible.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I also want to tell you, I love the city of Chicago. It's great to hear great technology companies like Saggezza are actually popping up there and doing great business. Now, one thing I also do love, I work very closely with people at Microsoft around user experience or UX. And I can tell you, it's actually a very difficult thing. Can you maybe take us through the landscape about, the whole topic here is about voice coming into UX and user experience. Can you maybe take us through the landscape of how that's being evolved over the years?
Yeah, for sure. I think that the ubiquitous of voice technologies is becoming more and more a thing that people are just getting used to. It's built into all of our smartphones as voice assistants. The number of smart speakers adoption is faster, growing faster than mobile phone adoption. It's being built into our appliances and our cars. But for us, it always starts at talking to customers, understanding what their real needs are. We are all about emerging technologies like voice. But at the heart of what we do from a UX perspective, it's always truly trying to understand what users are trying to do. In some cases, it makes sense to move to voice. A lot of our customers here at Saggezza, we're looking at working with clients who are in logistics and hospitality and in healthcare, also with fintech. There are certain products and services that they're releasing where being hands-free, having an accurate efficiency, it really makes sense from a voice perspective. It allows their customers, their users, to just get to be more productive. We can do it, in a traditional GUI sense, but adopting to voice technologies has really opened up a whole lot of other possibilities that make sense for some of these services that they're offering for their customers and for their internal employees as well.
Makes sense. Now, with the advent of machine learning, natural language processing, voice recognition, intent analysis, all of the buzzwords I can possibly go through, so we have all that kind of tagged in our video. Can you maybe tell us a little about what parts of the industry are using what technology and, what's kind of the most impactful that you've seen?
I mean, like I said, we work with our core competencies here are working with our clients in logistics and in hospitality, fintech. But I mean, it really is exploding everywhere. We have a data practice here, and we talk a lot about how the data in machine learning, the kind of technology that you talked about, how they compete with a single person who might be the best in their industry. Take something like healthcare. I might be able to be a doctor that's well-versed and years of experience and knowledgeable about very specific details, but I exponentially can empower a hospital or a service line by harnessing what data can do and not just tapping into the resource of one doctor, but 1,000 doctors with that same type of knowledge in real time. And that's really where a lot of that technology, machine learning, AI, and putting a good experience on top of that really brings value to our customers. Harnessing the power of technology to make them more productive. For us, it's not about replacing people. We think of UX as being the human side of technology. It's really understanding how those real people are using devices, either their laptops, their mobile phones, smart speakers, appliances, IoT devices, whatever it might be, whatever the situation they're in, and how do we make that experience the most productive, the most enjoyable, and the most successful possible.
Now, I work in software development. I can tell you that we definitely use agile development processes and flows. Can you maybe take us through how UX works alongside some delivery teams as part of the agile development process?
For sure. I think there are a number of different ways. Here at Saggezza, we try to pride ourselves. We do have, development teams here. That's really the core of our business, big data, product development, application development, mobile. We think we complement them really well with that end-to-end discovery and delivery, and UX plays a good part on both of those sides. We do not dictate to our product teams or our clients sort of a recipe of exactly how it's supposed to be done. We think that depending on the culture that we're moving into, we work with our client partners to really scale with them at the early stages. We might be doing something just in the normal sprints, and there is a UX designer who is really that checkpoint for best practices, industry best practices, to make sure that we are delivering things that are according to style guides or ADA compliance, whatever we can get as that final checkpoint before we go into delivery. As we move up a scale of a maturity level with UX, we think that our product teams, developers, customers included, product owners, they're all going to be part of our world as well in that discovery, in digging deeper and understanding who the customer is, building that empathy so that we can build the best product. I think at the end of the day, as we mature in our level of integration with UX and Agile, that we come to appreciate the values that we all bring to that product development. And it isn't just siloed and, you guys do the design part, we'll do the development part. Collectively, we work as a team to really understand what the customer wants and then go forth and deliver that.
Now, companies actually, as they implement more and more user experiences into their development flows and into their software and their services, what is the thing that they can do to figure out the return on investment by spending time and money and effort into UX experiences?
Great question. I think that we're trying to do our work that is measurable. Everything that we do from a UX perspective has got to be measurable, and it's got to be in line with the business goals. We are not, I always tell people that our work isn't really so much, there's definitely a creative part to it, but there's much more of a science to it. When we take on tasks and we modify or work with voice or work with GUI, we're looking to make changes that are impactful and that are going to be measurable, whether that be increasing sales or page views or leading people toward the checkout process. Everything we do, we start with the benchmark where we are, and when we start, the changes that we make that are we can put back in front of users, prototypes and test, get the results that we need before we go into delivery, and then measure again. They're all elements that are going to improve the bottom line. I think a lot of what we do I think that is unseen. There's a lot of work that we do in the discovery side of things, of understanding what customers want, and working with product teams to say this is the way you shouldn't do it. I think that a lot of companies that we go into, they're focused on the delivery, on how many features they can put out in a certain amount of time. And when we work with them, we're really trying to understand, the needs of those features and how they're going to function. And there's a lot of times, I would say more than half the time, when we're streamlining and removing features because of the work that we're doing that outlines that this isn't needed or this is going to frustrate a user even more. So there's cost savings with that. There's cost savings with, not having to do the rework, getting it right the first time. But more importantly, the cost savings of pleasing your customer, of delivering something that they want, that they can actually use and makes them more productive, not confusing them, and not turning them away. So there's a whole study that we've put together for clients on how we measure all the things that we do for success, and of course in terms of dollars. But there's the work that we do to make improvements, but more importantly, I think it's the work that we do that is unseen, the stuff that we do to declutter, to unconfuse, to make our customers happy because of what they're trying to do, be productive, get the job done, stay on task, complete the task, are the things that we're delivering.
Fantastic. Well, when we come back, we do want to talk a little bit more about user experience because it definitely is near and dear to my heart. Plus, I want to bring my co-host back in because they have some questions, I'm sure, about user experience because it definitely propagates itself through the entire enterprise. But before we get to all that, we do want to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Worldwide Technology. Now, if you ever get a chance to visit the Worldwide Technology's Advanced Technology Center, you should definitely go because it truly is an amazing site to see. They began building it almost 10 years ago, and it's grown exponentially. It's really like no other testing and research lab you have ever seen. Now, listen to what the lab actually contains. More than $500 million in equipment from hundreds of OEMs ranging from heavyweights like Cisco, NetApp, and VMware to emerging disruptors like Tanium, Equinix, and Expanse. Now, when you are developing products, you want to work with an organization that you can trust. Well, WWT is that trusted partner who will stay with you over the years. In fact, many of its customers actually have been with them for over a decade because they know WWT is where they can go to get the answers they need to make sure their business runs right. Now, with all it has to offer, the ATC really is an incubator for IT innovation. Listen to what else it has to offer. On-demand and schedulable labs like Cisco ACI, segmentation migration, and hundreds of other labs representing the newest advances in endpoint security architecture, software-defined networking, network automation, and primary and secondary storage. Now, if you worked with large products before, you know that sometimes it's really hard to build products before you know what the industry has to offer to help you. Well, the ATC can help you learn more about products before you launch. Now, the WWT's engineers use these environments to quickly spin up proof of concepts and pilots using the sandbox so customers can confidently select the best solution for their needs. Now, in many cases, this actually reduces the concept time from months to weeks, which actually increases speed to market and increases your productivity. Now, they offer lab as a service, which is actually a dedicated lab space within the ATC. Now, here customers can actually perform programmatic testing using the vast technology ecosystem that WWT has already built. Now, it's virtual, so you can actually take full advantage of the ATC's unique benefits anywhere in the world 24/7. Now, WWT's engineers work in these labs each and every day. They beta test new equipment and build reference architectures and custom integrations to actually help their customers make decisions and see results faster with much less investment. Now, if you've been eagerly awaiting to get to the market faster, the time is finally here. WWT has launched their new digital platform encompassing the ATC ecosystem. Now, this ecosystem creates a multiplier effect of knowledge, speed, and agility anytime, anywhere around the world for their customers. Now, get access to articles, case studies, hands-on labs, and other tools that make the difference in today's fast-paced world. To learn more about WWT, the ATC, and sign up for access to their new on-demand lab platform, go to wwt.com/twit and create an account today. WWT simplifies the complex. That's wwt.com/twit. WWT, delivering business and technology outcomes around the world. And we thank Worldwide Technologies for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Richard Alvarez from Saggezza about UX and how it's kind of been disrupting the market for their software services and so on. Richard, I do want to ask you, we're talking a little bit about Agile, and obviously agility and Agile is near and dear to my heart. We follow these processes when we software develop. But the question to you is, what does it have? Like, what is that kind of fail fast strategy that Agile has? How does it actually apply to UX as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's part of our DNA to look at something, observe it, understand how customers are using it, go through the ideation process of trying to improve it. If we do see that there are pain points in there, frustrations that are coming out from customers, how do we make this better? And the way we do that is to go through an experiment of putting together designs, putting it back in front of users, testing it, and failing fast. If we're not on the right path, then we tweak. If we are on the right path, then we constantly are looking to see how we might make that improvement even better. But like I said to another question, everything is measurable. We've got a benchmark that we start off with, and now we're looking to improve that. So we go through a design process. We put together ideas. We prototype. We test. We measure again. And as fast as we can fail, that leads us toward that positive solution, the better. And if we fail fast and figure out one way of not to do it, even better. That gives us more time to look at other considerations or tweak if we have to.
Now, one thing that's interesting is I found that UX, especially for applications for internal use, like for instance, budget applications or, trip analysis or so on, it can actually have an effect on the users and even like job satisfaction. So a tool or application or service that just kind of gets it out of the way and it lets you do your job can really make you feel great about it. And it actually can implement really efficient processes. What are you seeing here about the overall efficiency that comes from UX that can actually affect your organization or other organizations?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we're looking from our customer standpoint from a product. How do we make this better for the end user? But while we're in there, we're still UXers and we're still thinking of how to improve processes. So even within our own development teams, we're looking to see how do we streamline the delivery of wireframes or a prototype to get the kind of feedback that we need. And that means using different tools at different client sites. There may be different cultures set up already of how they communicate with each other, what tools they might be using, how best to deliver some of the artifacts that we produce in terms of design elements or UI elements. So wherever we go, we're always looking to see where we are when we start off with, and if there are ways to make those improvements. And sometimes it could be for ourselves learning new tools. Other times it might be just looking for efficiencies in a normal way of how we communicate. It could be using virtual blackboards, how we share comments, the process we go through in our normal agile ceremonies. It really depends. I mean, I think one of my early stories that how this all began here at Saggezza was working for a client, and we were working on designs, and our internal team had taken some time to produce this design. It was really well received by both the client and its customers, and so they said, well, let's do this again for the next few internal applications. So the first thing we said was, how do we not reinvent the wheel and sort of streamline this process of the UI development? And so we created a UI design system that would allow us to just plug and play, if you will, these Lego bricks and assemble them into these prototypes so that we can not worry about how to design UI elements, but how to put them together so that we can build screens and views for these applications. And that led to the rapid prototyping design sprints where we could work with product teams and quickly iterate through tests and designs, UI screens to put right back in front of our users and customers. Even though they're not fully fleshed out, we could take something from the whiteboard to a graphical user interface, or with simulators that provided to us, excuse me, from like Amazon to do simulations on voice applications as fast as we can, to put that out there in front of a customer, in front of internal groups, just to get the kind of feedback that'll lead us toward that final solution.
Fantastic. Now, I do want to bring my co-hosts back in because they do have some questions, especially, so I'll start with Curt, because Curt, you have the enterprise spin on it here. Now, you've talked with, researchers before about UX and voice with UX, correct?
I have, and more than just voice, the whole notion of sound as a critical element of UX. And I think my question is this, so many of these discussions go to voice replacing some current element of UX, whether it be the keyboard or a pointing device. What are your thoughts about the ability of voice to allow capabilities that aren't readily available through, say, keyboard or pointing device? Do you think that there are possibilities for teams and individuals to do things using their voice that are just too difficult, or we're not even thinking about really for the typical typed input?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Curtis. Thanks for asking that. I think that we've had some experience working with traditional interfaces, GUI interfaces, where they're moving toward voice just because it's just a natural communication, or a natural part of the way we as humans sort of communicate. I think sorry about the noise in the background here. The way we interface with the computer, up until now with the GUI interfaces, they've been dictating how we interact with them. So from a menu base or from gestures, they dictate the mannerisms and the interactions that we're going to have to get to the kind of information for us to be productive. With voice, it's much more natural. It's this conversation that we're having where I can speak and it can detect what I want and give me that answer immediately. Again, hands-free, while I might be multitasking, doing some other things. So I'll give you a good example. We were working with a healthcare company, and there's a lot of input where they work with a lot of codes, and sometimes they just need to look up a code for a specific device or something technical that they might be using for something in the hospital room or during an operation or whatever. And voice gives them the ability to continuously speak these commands and have an immediate answer while they're continue doing whatever it is that they're working on. The voice can detect that. The voice can give you the immediate answer. But more importantly, I think that what voice allows us to do is to just act naturally, speak naturally, do the things that we normally want to do without having to adjust to learning a new interface or adjusting to a new device of how to get the information that we need out of it. It's just a very natural extension of how we as humans communicate.
You mentioned at the tail end of your answer there, getting the information out of a system. What is your experience with using sound, whether it's in a voice or other kinds of sound, in terms of giving information from a system, especially with some of the very rich big data analytics that are going on, doing that using sound as opposed to the traditional tabular forms or spreadsheet or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in our case, it really comes down to tactical needs for our clients. We're experimenting with a lot of what we can do with voice, but when it comes down to our clients, they've got real needs today, and there are certain situations. I'm thinking of manufacturing where there is a real need for their users to be hands-free and to communicate this way, and to have someone guide them through a process without having to fumble through keyboards or mouse clicks, and just allow the voice recognition to walk them through and accomplish a task. Another thing that's really important too is that the voice assistant is not going to get frustrated with you. If we were talking to a real person and I have to ask the same question 3 or 4 times, maybe because I'm not understanding or I'm not clear about how I want to do something, or maybe they're just distracted. There's no frustration from the being detected from the voice assistant. They're always going to be polite. They're always going to help you direct if it's done well in a good UX model. It's going to guide you to the right solution you want. That takes an understanding of what the needs are, what we want to accomplish, and how we can guide users toward completing those tasks. The more you know about the end user, the customer, what their needs are, the better you are equipped to build a UX for GUI or for voice that will accomplish and make them more productive.
Well, I do want to bring in our security expert. Thank you so much, Curtis. Bam, I want to throw it to you to maybe give a security spin on it.
Yeah, so when I think about UX, Richard, and this is really fascinating because I think UX is a really important component to anything being really useful, no matter how advanced the technology. If the UX isn't there, then you're not going to see the adoption. But when I put my security hat on, the most frustrating experience any user has on the internet is logging in to whatever service they need, right? But we need authentication for security purposes. Can you talk a little bit about any work that Saggezza is doing in the field of more frictionless authentication, maybe passwordless, or maybe we get to the nirvana of one of my favorite hacker movie Sneakers, where my voice is my passport, that sort of thing. So, do you think voice may be a way for us to authenticate in the future, or are there other things that UX-wise that you do to help streamline logins?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can speak specifically to logins, but I can tell you that your first part of the question, UX being a part of a better delivery model for really any technology. It's really about understanding what the user needs are. If that is IoT or wearables or machine learning and AI through voice or through any other emerging technology that's come out in the future. To me, it always starts with understanding the user needs. For security purposes, I do believe that there are going to be other ways than just entering the username and password through the keyboard. We're seeing that with facial recognition. We're seeing that with voice recognition in some areas. I haven't played a part in that just yet. We've explored it here at Saggezza, sort of in a POC model, proof of concept, and R&D, but nothing that we've delivered just yet. I know the capabilities are there. Sometimes you're just playing a little chicken and egg with the end users. Are they ready for this? The technology might be, but it's a matter of getting customers on board. And in many cases, it's flipped around. Customers are asking for this, and it takes a little while for the technology to adapt to what the user needs are. I do think that we are converging on a lot of that. There's a lot of emerging technologies today that just commonplace for a lot of users. Voice is a big one. I think it is very common. Everybody has a smartphone. More and more people are seeing it in their cars. You walk into hotel rooms nowadays. You might notice that there's an Alexa dot sitting on a dresser drawer. It's built into a lot of our appliances and IoT devices. So the more we start seeing these kind of things, the more I think you'll start seeing needs where we start crossing over into not just the more fun or practical needs of everyday things, but maybe some of the things that you're talking about with security risks that are sort of eliminated because it's not necessarily the UX part of it, because I think that we do have a good handle of how we can make that experience pleasurable for the end user, of accommodating their needs and understanding how they need to be productive. But really, the security side of things, the back end side of things, I work very closely. Our team works very closely with our big data team. If they can come up with the technology to deliver that, we're certain that we can come up with the interface, the appropriate interface for that as well, be that a graphical interface or voice or whatever the next challenge is. For us, it always starts with customers.
Yeah. So speaking of customers, I've been reading a lot lately about behavioral biometrics and how we track how users interact with our applications, even with their mobile device. What do they how, where do they travel? How do they move? do you guys do any work with behavioral biometrics and like sort of tracking, how the users interact, and how does that help you advance the state of the user experience art, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. We have done, we've done some. There was one experiment we were doing here in our office about our lobby and our sort of the welcome experience, if you will. Sometimes we don't have our receptionist at the front desk, and so we wanted to give our users a better experience of how they might, interact with us here at Saggezza. And we came up with, ideas, maybe using voice for that. But some of this came from past experience where we did put together sort of that biometric greeting of, walking in and detecting that there is someone in the room and alerting, the system to welcome them. In our case, there was a specific need for coming in for an appointment, or maybe you're a guest. Someone's expecting you here, for a particular meeting or business need, for vendors who are working with Saggezza, potential business partners, maybe potential employees. In those cases, there was a little bit more than just detecting a gesture and alerting them with a welcome message. There was more of digging deeper into what those needs are going to be for this particular user, of checking into a meeting or finding out if what room I should go into, or alerting someone specific that I'm here and maybe I need to go to an assigned room. So for that, we wanted to move beyond just I don't want to call it the gimmicky part of it, because it's not. I mean, those technologies exist for a reason. It's just that again, starting with the user needs for this particular user, business professionals who may be limited in time. They came in for a specific meeting, or a new hire, a guest for our office. There's a time and a place for the biometrics and alerting someone with a welcome message, and another time and a place for getting down to business and making them productive, of checking into a meeting, assigning them to a room, or alerting someone in the office that they're here. And we didn't want to have them go through the whole gestures toward a screen, and even a voice. In that case, we decided that was probably not the best decision, because some people aren't as comfortable, talking maybe in a new place, talking to a device. They're going to be much more comfortable interacting with a touchscreen. In terms of the user needs for this particular persona, that's a solution we came to. But it really depends. Who the audience member is, what they're trying to accomplish. I can see where biometrics might make a lot of sense for a particular user, for a particular need, if the user case warranted that. But everything that we do is really not going to be just for the show of it. It really comes down to keep drilling on the same thing, understanding what the customers are here for, what their tasks are, and how to make them as productive as possible.
We're talking with Richard Alvarez. Richard, thank you so much for being here. It was a great topic. We really do appreciate you. We're running a little bit low on time, but we did want to give you a chance to maybe tell the folks at home where they can learn more about Saggezza, where they can go get started. How can organizations get in touch?
Absolutely. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity to talk with you guys. I really appreciate that. Saggezza.com, Saggezza, Saggezza.com. Please feel free to look at our experience page under what we do. You'll learn all about what our practice does, but feel free to explore the 4 other practices that are part of our site: big data, delivery and technical excellence, managed services and technical excellence. We're happy to talk to our customers. We're definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution provider. We are a solution partner. We work with our client partners to figure out on our side who their customers are, so that we can deliver the very best product possible. Thanks again. I really appreciate you guys taking some time to listen to me.
Well, folks, you've done it again. You've sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe, quoting the 9 out of 10 assist and activate words. But I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host in crime, to our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, thank you so much for being on the show, especially during your travels. Where can the folks find you and all of your work?
Well, as always, they can find my work at darkreading.com, especially over in the Edge. You look up at the top nav bar, little blue box towards the left, click on the Edge to find features and things that are just a little bit out there in the world of security. Of course, I'll always point to my work on my Twitter feed. That's at KG4GWA, and I'm trying to do more and more with Instagram. So look me up, Curt_Franklin on Instagram.
Thanks, Curt. We also thank our very own Mr. Brian McHenry. Brian, you can tell folks at home where they can find you, all of your work, and what's going on at F5.
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you have a bot problem, credential stuffing, reach out to whoever your contact is at F5 about our bot protect service that's in private beta right now. You can find me on Twitter at BA McHenry. If you don't know who to talk to at F5, you can come right to me and I'll find who you should be talking to. And if you want to see what all our users are doing, head on over to devcentral.f5.com, which is our 250,000 user strong user community.
Thanks, Bam. Well, we also have to thank you as well. You are the person who drops in each and every week to watch and listen to our show to get your enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and to listen to the show. Go ahead and go out right now to our show page, twit.tv/Twiat. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, plus all the show notes, co-host information, guest information, and the links to the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll actually get those helpful and subscribe download links where you actually can help support the show. Get your audio version, your video version, your HD video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices, on any one of your podcast apps. This is the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news. And we love doing the show. With your subscription, we can continue doing it. Now, after you subscribe, also remember each and every week we do this show live at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. If you want to watch the show live.twit.tv. Come on and see what happens behind the scenes. All the show topics and everything got kind of talked about during that time. So feel free to jump in live. Also, if you're going to jump in live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. irc.twit.tv. There we have a bunch of great characters in the chat room that give us topics and ask questions during the show. So if you're going to jump and watch the show live, jump into the chat room as well. But you got to remember, not everyone can watch the show live or jump in the chat room live. And if you want to still be part of the discussion, head over right now to twit.community. There you'll actually can join in the discussions of all of our hosts, all of our show topics. A lot of the Twit armies over there in the Twiat Riot. So you can enjoy conversations off peak times or off when you have to go offline for a while. You can always catch up over at twit.community. Also, don't forget, you can follow me at twitter.com/LouMM. There I post all of my work that I do at Microsoft, and especially all the products that I've been working on outside of Microsoft. Of course, also remember dev.office.com. That's the best place to go if you want to make your apps and your Office experience actually more productive for your organization and more customized for you as well. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week to do This Week in Enterprise Tech, and we couldn't do the show without them. I also want to thank all the engineers at Twit. Of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chee. He's not only our co-host in crime, but he's also our tireless producer. He gets all the guests, the bookings, the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do this show without him. Of course, before we sign out, we have to thank our TD for today, Victor. As always, as part of tradition, we talk a little bit about what was the major topic of today's show.
I don't know. All I heard was Bam wants to unlock stuff with his voice. And I was just thinking, I mean, we have a lot of the people that can probably get us to that, right? And I like sneakers too.
Okay. I would say the major topic, though, was more around tape backups are here to stay, but maybe next time. Thank you, Victor. Thank you for participating.
All right, next time.
That's right. And until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.